Okay, so as we rejoin this segment of our demonstration, I want to just let you know a couple quick review things that we've done a perimeter. We established that by using the plan and using the section, and that got us the form of the building. Then we used the plan to find each of the openings, just as we talked about. Now, I'm going to hold off on putting the trim on the doors and windows for right now. They will be important, but not because we're going to put in some other elements that may require us to erase them and so on. I'm going to wait just a bit. So our next big feature that we need to provide on this elevation is the predominant element that's occurring in the facade, and that is the porch element. This porch element is, the way that people come and go out of the front facade or front entrance of the house. And so, and this being the door that they're going to enter on. So as a result, what we want to do is we want to draw the porch in its various parts. And so we'll just start from the basics, start from the bottom and work our way up. Now, to do that, what I want you to do is look at the plan down below. You can see the edges of it right there on the plan. That's given to you. You don't have to measure it again. You could, but it's not necessary. So again, we know that the floor of the porch has to be even with the floor of the building, so that when you walk out and you step outside the door, you don't fall or trip or have a fall situation like that. So as a result, we know where the top of the porch is. Now, where's the bottom of the porch? It sits on top of the ground. So all we really have to do in this particular case is to find the edge, and here's that vertical edge like we talked about in the previous segment, and this edge right here, and extend them from the finished floor to the ground level. So I'm doing that here, and I'm going to re-emphasize that in just a minute. Okay, so here's one edge. You can see it lining up underneath. And here's the other edge. You can see it lining up with the outer edge of the porch, both sides. Now, across the top, we're going to make the top of it a little bit more prominent so we can see that. And then the bottom's pretty good right now. All right, so that is the porch. That's the front block of the porch. Now, in order to do that, we've created that baseline. Now what we need to do is think about the porch primary elements. And so we're going to start with those posts. You remember these dark boxes here and here, those are the same as what was inside the building that we did last week. Those are supports, those are posts that'll hold up the roof of the porch. So in order to do that, we're going to put the post on the base and we're going to project it up. How far do we need to go? Well, we're going to take a quick look at our reference again, and it says here that the porch eave is 8 feet above finished floor. So that's the bottom of the eave, not the top of the eave. Okay, so we're going to measure from the finished floor up 8 feet even, and that's going to put us right here. Let me read that again here. Top of eave, my mistake, sorry. Guess you got to read the fine print. So I read it again. Porch eaves, 8 foot 0 inches above finished floor, top of eave. Okay, so I'm just to draw a light horizontal line across, and that gives me this side and this side of the porch height for the eaves. Okay, so now how big are the porch posts? Well, we're just going to replicate the information that's on the plan. Just like we did last week, we're going to start at the top right here of the porch. We're going to go upward till we get to that 8-foot point, and we're going to stop there. We're probably going to have to erase a little bit, but we're just going to stop there for this part of the exercise. So how wide is it? It's as wide as indicated on the plan, and it looks to be about 4 inches, by the way. So I'm going to take those up, and I'm just going to stop them at that line. May have to adjust it later, but we'll see that in a minute. Same thing on the other side. Here's a post on this side. We're going to just take the width and project them up from the floor to the eave line. Now, I believe that the eaves are, I think they're 8 inches. And so we're going to use that. Let's see here, roof edge, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we're just going to use the 8-inch dimension as a vertical height, and that should be adequate for getting us the height we need for that. Now, remember, we said it was that 8 foot was to the top, so now we're going to come down 8 inches, and that's really going to be the top of our post. So I'm going to measure it down now. I'm going to mark it. There we go. Whatever I mark on one side and it's parallel, I'm going to mark it on the other, and so we're good to go. All right, so because the eave pops out just a hair, and you can see that on this representation, we're going to draw that roof line now. So I'm coming out just a little bit to add some thickness to that piece, and I'm going to project it up lightly to start until 45 degrees. From the top here, 45, from the top here, 45, and that's going to give me the height. Now, because this thing is measured 8 inches, we're going to need to measure the thickness here, and I'm measuring that. I'm going to measure it again over here just to make sure that I'm correct. Okay. So now that piece is there, and that piece is there, and there we go. Okay, so the basics are done. I'm going to just make a couple little, if you can zoom in a little bit, you can see that the fascia is going to be, or the eave is going to be a little bit flat across the bottom. Even though we have a post there, it's going to sit on the outside of the post. And then I'm going to come back in and harden up the lines for the roof. And I'll finish off with the eave here and on the other side as well. Okay, so far so good. Post, post, eave, eave, roof going to the center at a 45-degree angle from this side and from this side. Okay, all right. So there, we put the roof structure on. Seemed to go pretty well. Now we need to put the lower portion into play. Now there's going to be some graphic conflicts here. So I'm just going to give you a heads up. We're going to have to do a little bit of racing later. Just in order to keep a little bit more precise, I would suggest use as sharp a pencil as you can, because we're using some pretty small design features here. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put in the steps. So the things that we did on the plan 2 weeks ago, and the thing we did on the section last week, is we said all stairs are 7 inches high, 11 inches in tread dimension. Okay, so as we go down the stairs here, we can identify that our stair riser height right here is 7 inches nominal. Just because at the scale, that's the best we can do. 7 inches high, and the stair tread is 11 inches long horizontally. Okay, so because we're in elevation, in this particular orientation, we're not going to see the tread. We're going to see the tread line, but we're not going to see the tread in any sort of other dimensional way except a horizontal line. But we are going to see the height of each riser. And so I'm going to go ahead and put those riser heights in. And I'm just going to mark them as a little dot or a little tick mark on each one as I'm going down. And now, we talked about this, I think, previously. At this scale, it's really hard to get them to work exactly right. Now, what I wanted to share with you is that we said that the finished floor height was 36 inches, which is 3 feet. Well, if we do the correct dimensioning, that 7 inches each, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to measure those again here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times 7 is 35. We're off by an inch. Okay, so we're working with a schematic. These are relatively small scale drawings. You can see how sharp your pencil would have to be to make that 1 inch make a difference, especially when you look at how little that spacing is on that. So let's just give ourselves a little grace here and say that'll work fine. Okay, so I'm just simply going to draw a line across. I'm not going to blast them on yet, because I think what it's going to do is it's going to create a little bit of confusion in just a minute when we put the railing in. But that's the spacing, and that's the same spacing that's in on our example right here. Those are 7-inch high. Looks pretty close. Now, what we're missing is the railings. So in this particular orientation, we really only have stair railings to work with. In the other elevation, we'll have some guard railings, but we'll see how that works in a bit. So as we do this, then we can see the railings here. I'm going to say make them as wide as the post. That'll be adequate for a schematic design at this level. So here's our post on this side and this side. We're going to put them on both sides. So we're going to measure how high up are the guardrails. It says the guardrails are 3'6", okay, and that the handrails are a nominal 2 inches thick. We're not going to worry about that. We'll see that in a bit. All right, so that's 42 inches, 3'6". 1, 2, 3, and 6. There's our height. Now, because they sit on top and they're going to ride out in front, you're not going to see the steps in behind them. They're going to be covered by the railing. So I'm just going to redraw this down and down and up and down, I should say, all the way down. And I'm going to erase the remnant line of the stairs behind. Now you might want to use your eraser shield on this. That would be your call entirely. But with this, we know, and I'm going to get rid of the the porch finish floor, because it's also hiding as well. I'm going to have to clean off my eraser here. Okay. So I'm going to redraw that, and we'll have that in. And theoretically, we should show the top of the railing as it exits the stair. And so what that would mean, and you'll see this in cross section, that's about 6 inches above the finished floor. So now I'm going to finish off the steps, make them a little bit stronger. And we can move on. All right, so what we have is we've drawn the roof, the posts, the base, the stairs, and the railing. Okay, so that should be adequate for the work that we're doing here, and that's provided right there. Let's spend a few minutes and put some trim on this thing, or let's just take a minute and talk about the solarium before we do all the trim work. If you look here, much of the information is already on your section. So if you wanted to retrace this, you would be largely correct. The elements that are going to align are this band is going to be that band. So you can use that. But remember, it's not a section anymore. It's an elevation. So it's going to actually have a slightly different look. You can take a look at the kind of look it's going to have from this. Okay, but here's the seat element, here's the seat element, or actually that's the sill, and there's the sill right there. It cantilevers out, there you can see it cantilevers out away from the building, and so you can take 80 or 90% of the information by simply sliding this back up under it and repeating the line work. Now just bear in mind, this center line is glazing. We're not going to see it that way. We're just going to see it as an elevation panel. That's why we don't see the same line, that same third line in here. Okay, so I'm going to just suggest trace this again. leave out the middle line, leave out the poche because it's not there, and kind of eyeball this a bit and see how it looks for you. I think it will be mostly correct. I don't want to draw it up again because I think it just consumes too much time in the exercise, and I think you understand what we're trying to achieve. But I am going to take a minute and look at a couple of other quick elements. One, way back up here on the plan, there's a little pop-out called a greenhouse window. And in our information about the windows, it does tell us that there is a sill at that. It's the head height's the same, basically. It's 3'6" instead of 3 foot because there's a countertop attached to it, and it's at 3 feet, and we want to be slightly above that. So, because the head height is established already by the existing head height, it's going to be the same height, 8'6" or 6'8", sorry. And we're going to come up just a little bit higher. We're going to be up an additional 6 inches from where we were. So I marked that here. Now, and how far out does it pop? We're just going to line up our triangle and line it up. So it lines up way up there with that. So you can see it right there. I'm just shooting a line down, but I'm not taking it all the way. I'm just stopping it to where it needs to go. Now, I put my 45 because it's a 45-degree angle on it. Bringing down my element. It's got a little bit of a frame down below it, and we can add those frame components in to finish it off. And we're principally done with that little piece. It didn't take very long. That's it. Pretty simple. But you do see it back there. It's pretty far beyond. You got to pick it up. Okay, so we got that. Now let's talk about finishing out the trim here. Remember I mentioned we didn't want to do it initially because there's a lot of stuff on top of it. So I didn't want to do that and erase it and do it and erase it again. In some future applications, we might want to do that, but in this one, not so much. Okay, so what is the standard trim? We're saying that the standard trim inside is 2 inches. We're outside. 4 inches nominal, says it right there. So 4-inch nominal outside trim. So I'm going to measure, I'm going to mark them, and I'm going to draw them. So I'm going to do that rather quick, and it doesn't take too long to do it if you just kind of get all your measurements done and then kind of put them in as best you can. Whew, that's close. I may end up having to share that one. Okay, this side, the trim is covered by the post. We're not going to see that one. We're not going to see the trim around the door on this side. We'll see the top. We're not going to see the bottom, we're not going to see the sides because they're hidden by the post. So there's that. So I'm going to go ahead and put these on. Oh, need the sill trim. There we go. All right, so here we go. Just drawing them in. Now remember, it's trim. Probably shouldn't be put on overly heavy because it is just trim and it's not the actual opening. I've got to put my edge trim over here. I'll get that right there and that one right there. And I'm going to shoot it's the same trim height from all the way across. And we're almost done. Now this one is a little tricky. When we get to the center, you have to complete all the corners. I'll let you do that on your own, but you can kind of see where we're going. Because we're so darn close, you could either do a double line or you could just put a single line there. That's fine. It would be all up to you. But understand that what we're trying to do here is add definition. If you look at your house, you probably just don't have a round cutout called a window. There's probably some trim around it. There's some definition that's occurring at the window, and that's what we're trying to do here. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to extend my roof eave of the main roof up, and so I can finish that off. And there we go. Okay, so this is the basics of this elevation. We are principally done. You know how to do the solarium. I'm not going to spend time on that. We're going to come back in a little bit and we're going to talk about the next elevation we're going to do. So as we close this portion of the demonstration, you have the rough out here. All the elements are there. There are some additional elements that I'm going to talk about in the coming demonstrations, in the next two that are coming up, where we start to talk about characteristics and drawing the drawing with features and textures and patterns and things like that that help to describe the building materials of the object, that this little house that we're doing. For right now, we're not going to spend much time on it. So with that, I'm going to close things down. I'm going to, for this first piece of the two elevations, by the way, this is the north elevation. You can see our north arrow here says we're pointing to the north. This is the south. Next, we're going to do the east elevation on this side. So when I return, we'll set that up. We'll start that up. And so I look forward to seeing it in a few minutes when we start that video demonstration. Thank you, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.